The conversation ended hours ago, but your body still reacts as if it is happening now. The strange part is that during the actual moment, you felt almost calm. You listened, you nodded, you even smiled, and only now does the full weight of the exchange arrive. Why does the mind wait until the lights are off to stage a conversation that is already over? This nightly theater is so common that psychologists gave it a name: post-event processing. It means going over a social situation again and again after it has ended, searching for mistakes or unspoken replies. At first glance, it seems like careful self-reflection, an attempt to learn from awkward moments. But there is a catch that makes this mental habit more complicated. The more you replay, the worse you feel, and the worse you feel, the louder the replay becomes. It is not a simple case of worry. It is a loop that feeds on the very search for a solution. This pattern can leave you exhausted the next morning, even though your body never moved. Most people assume the mind replays because it has unfinished business that needs to be sorted out. If you could just find the right words, the right comeback, the memory might finally lose its sting. That assumption makes sense, but the evidence points in a different direction. When researchers tracked people's thoughts after stressful social interactions, they found something surprising. The replaying did not lead to clearer insights. It led to stronger emotional reactions to the same memory. In other words, the more you run the tape, the more painful it becomes, even though the actual conversation did not change. One reason is that each replay session adds a new layer of feeling onto the original memory. Your brain does not store conversations like a video recording. It reconstructs them every time you remember. If you are tense and self-critical while replaying, the reconstructed version absorbs that tension. So the memory you revisit tonight is already more charged than the conversation that actually happened. This is why a silly comment can feel mortifying by midnight, even though no one else seems to remember it. There is a second problem. The search for a better reply rarely reaches a satisfying finish. Because the moment is gone, you can generate endless alternatives without ever knowing which one would have worked. The brain treats an unfinished problem as an open file, and it keeps reopening that file until some closure arrives. Psychologists noticed this tendency long ago. Uncompleted tasks stay in mind more stubbornly than completed ones. Conversation that felt unresolved, a misunderstood joke, a strange pause, turns into such an uncompleted task. And at night, when the outside world goes quiet, these unfinished social files push their way to the front of your attention. So what began as a simple attempt to learn has become a restless hunt for an ending that cannot be written. That is the first turn. Replaying does not resolve the feeling. It rehearses the feeling. Understanding this shift changes what we need to ask about the quiet hours. Instead of asking why the mind replays, the deeper question becomes, why does an unsolved social moment feel so urgent? Our ancestors lived in small groups where belonging meant survival, and exclusion was a serious threat. A sharp word or a failed introduction could weaken a bond that might never be repaired. That ancient pressure has not disappeared. It lives inside the brain's threat detection system. When you worry about how you came across, your body responds as if a real social danger is still unfolding. The heart beats a little faster, muscles tense, and attention narrows to every possible mistake. This response is fast and automatic, and it does not care that the conversation ended hours ago. It also does not care that the other person might not even remember the awkward moment you are stuck on. The brain treats a social stumble like a stone in a shoe. It keeps drawing your attention until you remove it. But when you replay, you are not removing the stone. You are pressing it harder, hoping it will stop hurting. Research on rumination, the habit of repetitive negative thinking, shows that it can turn a small difficulty into a lasting mood. In one well-established pattern, People who ruminate after a criticism report more distress the next day, not less. The rumination did not help them find a solution. It kept the criticism fresh and made it harder to sleep. A network of brain regions, sometimes called the default mode network, becomes active when your mind wanders. This network helps you think about the past, imagine the future, and understand other people's thoughts. But at night, without an external focus, it can get stuck cycling through social memories that carry strong emotions. What usually helps you reflect can, in the quiet darkness, become a trap. So replaying is not just a bad habit. It is a natural capacity turned against itself by a missing piece. The missing piece is a signal that the problem is finished, a conclusion the real world never delivered. Your mind tries to create that conclusion by simulating alternative endings, but each simulation raises new doubts. This is why you can lie awake inventing perfect replies that only make you feel more uncertain. The more creative your imagined comebacks, the more reasons you find to still feel embarrassed. There is also evidence that replay tends to focus on a narrow set of details, a facial expression, a tone of voice, a single pause. You magnify these fragments while ignoring everything else that happened in the conversation. The friendly part of the exchange, the laughter that followed, the person's relaxed posture, all that fades from view. What remains is a distorted close-up, and memory treats that close-up as the whole truth. Now the stage is set for a painful reversal that will explain how to interrupt the loop. Return to the person lying in bed, still trying to edit a conversation that ended hours ago. They believe that if they can just replay it one more time, they will find the key that unlocks peace. But each replay strengthens the emotional charge, making the memory feel more dangerous, not less. The very act of searching for a solution has become the fuel that keeps the fire burning. This is the central paradox at the heart of nighttime replay, and it points toward the final answer. The mind is repeating the memory to protect you from a social threat, but the repetition itself is what causes the distress. The threat you feel tonight lives in the replay, not in the actual relationship. Meanwhile, the cost is real: lost sleep, a heavier mood in the morning, and a warped memory that will feel even worse tomorrow night. Psychologists who study post-event processing have found that it predicts social anxiety over time, even when the initial event was mild. In other words, the replay does not just reflect nervousness. It can create a more nervous version of you. But here is the most unsettling finding. The loop feels necessary, even when you know it makes you feel worse. Your brain mistakes familiarity for importance. Because the memory keeps appearing, it assumes the threat must be real. So you reinvestigate the same scene with the same anxious lens, and the loop tightens. This is not a failure of willpower. It is a consequence of how emotional memory works. The brain does not simply replay a file. It reactivates the feeling, the body response, and the urge to solve the unsolvable. Now the real turning point emerges, and it changes what you can do about the loop. The only way to reduce the power of the replay is to stop treating every repeat as an unsolved problem. That means recognizing the loop as a mental habit, not as a source of new information about that conversation. When the remembered sentence echoes at midnight, you can label it. This is a replay, not a new event. Labeling it interrupts the automatic urge to jump into the scene and start fixing it. Not forcefully, because force often backfires, but gently, like setting down a hot stone you did not realize you were holding. Over time, this shift signals to the brain that the memory is not a current threat, and its emotional charge begins to fade. The replay does not disappear overnight, but it loses its grip, and the body can finally rest. That is the deepest answer to why the mind replays conversations at night. It is trying to protect you from a danger that lives only in the replay. Now return to the quiet room where you lay awake an hour ago. It is not a sign that you failed. It is a sign that an ancient social alarm is still ringing inside a modern mind. The alarm does not know that the conversation partner has already moved on, or that you are safe in bed. You are not broken for replaying. You are human, and your brain is doing what it was shaped to do under uncertainty. But now you have a choice that you did not have before: to notice the replay without becoming its main character. You might still feel the body's response, but you can let it be there while you shift attention to the weight of the blanket. You might still hear the unsaid reply, but you can watch it drift by like a thought cloud, not a command. With practice, the loop becomes shorter, the volume lower, and the night returns to its quiet purpose. This does not mean you stop caring about social connections. It means you stop punishing yourself for moments you cannot redo. The conversation is over, but the learning can happen without the pain. You can reflect later, in daylight, when your mind is less likely to treat every awkward pause as a catastrophe. And you can begin to trust that one clumsy sentence does not erase all the warmth you brought to that room. The quiet mind at night is not empty. It is simply gentle enough to let the show end. And when the next unedited memory arrives, you will know that you do not have to solve it at 3 in the morning.